Most of us are living our lives at 70 miles an hour. We are racing to the office, rushing through the commute, and checking off a never-ending list of responsibilities. We provide, we produce, and we protect. But often, by the time we walk through our front doors, our hearts are still stuck on the highway. We are physically present, but emotionally and spiritually, we are miles away. There's a profound promise found in the ancient scriptures, a promise about turning of hearts. It says that the hearts of the fathers will be turned towards their children, and the hearts of children towards their fathers. But here's the catch. You can't turn a heart at 70 miles an hour. Connection doesn't happen at the speed of achievement. It happens at the speed of a walk. Today, we're exploring what happens when a dad decides to slow down to 3 miles per hour. We're talking about the spiritual mechanics of turning your hearts back towards your home. And once you're there, how to teach your children to walk to the Father who created them. We aren't just talking about saying grace at dinner. We're talking about building a lifestyle of effective relational prayer that shapes a child's soul for a lifetime. We will explore all this in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. This program is made possible by financial support from Smile Online Course and Books. Smile Online offers online courses for teens and young adults designed to help them master social and career skills. Subject matter includes customer service skills, job interviewing, electronic etiquette, and managing stress. More information is available at thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me and my co-host and son, Isaac.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge.
Joining us today to lead the conversation is Tyler Graham, a father of 6 and the founder of 3 Miles Per Hour Fatherhood. He's a man dedicated to helping dads find their pace, reclaim their presence, and lead their families with a turned heart. Tyler, welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge.
Jonathan, Isaac, so great to be on with both of y'all today. Excited for our conversation here.
So Tyler, what's your favorite dad joke?
I've got a few for y'all today, and they're both personal, I guess, to us. So we have a small homestead on our land with goats, and 2 of our goats are pregnant and about to have babies here in a few weeks.
How fun.
So my first dad joke for you is, what do you call a sleeping baby goat?
You know this one, Isaac?
No. He said sweeping, so I'm trying to think
Sleeping.
for a second. Oh, sleeping. I'm trying to think for a second here.
I got nothing.
My brain is just as dead as his.
A kid napper. So again, I can't promise these are going to be the best dad jokes you've ever heard on here, but we'll have some kids coming into the picture next month, like I said, and felt timely for that one. So the other one I've got for you is, if April showers bring May flowers, what do May flowers bring?
What? I have no idea.
I don't know.
Pilgrims. Again, we're a homeschool family, so we lean into the nerdy jokes here, which is personal preference of mine.
That's 2 things we have in common. We are a homeschooling family as well, and I grew up on a goat farm.
It's amazing. I love it.
Tyler, your brand is 3 mile per hour fatherhood. Most dads are living at 70 mile per hour, trying to provide and produce. Why is slowing down to walking speed the essential first step in turning a father's heart toward his children?
And I think that's a fantastic question. And I think to answer it, I'll kind of talk through a little bit of the kind of context and background of the brand name 3 Mile Per Hour Fatherhood. It started for me about 6 years ago now, at the beginning of 2020. At the end of every year, I'd take some time, typically the week between Christmas and New Year, and just get a day away to pray and rest and reflect on the previous year. And look forward to the upcoming year. And part of that rhythm for me is always just praying and asking God for a word or a phrase for the upcoming year to sort of mark what it feels like He has in store for me. And going into 2020, I kept hearing the phrase slow down.
Yes.
And I could take up our entire time recording to talk about how that's played out in my own life. But to keep it brief, what I recognized was that, to your point, so many people, and dads in particular, are moving so quickly through life. And it's natural. It's the demands of work and parenting and fatherhood and social obligations. And it's just the cultural norm for people to be moving from one thing to the next very quickly at all times. And when you're constantly in that state of hurry or rush, it's nearly impossible to be present. I always say that I can't be the type of dad I want to be while I'm in a rush. Those things are mutually exclusive. And so when we live at that pace at 70 miles per hour, we're not present. Like we're missing out on the things that our children are growing in. We're missing the things that are starting to bring worry or anxiety into our kids. And we're moving too fast to notice these like small nuances or these small shifts in our kids that we as dads have a responsibility to recognize, to pay attention to engage in our kids with. And so 3 mile per hour is the average speed of somebody walking. I like to call it the pace of presence. I can't remember if I read that somewhere, who actually coined that phrase. But my goal in the work that I do with this brand and the content that I create for dads is to be an encouraging voice, inviting dads to live counterculturally, to slow down, to be present with their kids, to pay attention to the things that they as dads need to address and to engage with in their kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, I noticed when you were talking there, you two things that I picked up and noticed is that when you're and this was you talking too. It was like you were talking about like we're like we're missing out on what our kid what's really important for our kids too. And
Hmm.
something that I've noticed exactly what you said there. Like we're rushing past it. We're just
Hmm.
taking it too quickly and we're just running right past it. And another thing that I noticed, if your kids are like really stressed out or something, and then all of a sudden, you start rushing through, and then all of a sudden you're getting worried and anxiety, and all of a sudden you're starting to get
Hmm.
anxiety, and all of a sudden you start getting like kind of anxious. That's just gonna make them even more afraid or even more scared or whatever their problem is. It's just gonna kind of I don't know how to put it more of like encourage it more kind of
Hmm.
because like
Yeah.
if you're stressed out, like a kid always looks up to his dad as this big strong man that can fix anything, that will fix your problems. But then all of a sudden, if that it's like if God were to all of a sudden start sweating for some reason because he's working too
Hmm.
hard, and all of a sudden that's now gonna make me start to sweat too. Now I'm gonna get scared because if my heavenly Father is all of a sudden now starting to get really anxious, then I should be. And it's kind of like that with my dad. If he starts to get worried, then that starts letting me know that it's time for me to get worried.
Tyler, I thought you had a post about that somewhere on social media too.
Yeah, it makes me think. I have this memory from my childhood and being a kid, and I really didn't like storms when I was a kid. I'd get very fearful of the thunder and the lightning.
Yeah.
And I have this memory of riding in the back seat of our family car with my dad. He was driving us somewhere and storming outside, and I was afraid we were going to get in a wreck because the roads were wet and the storm was getting pretty nasty.
Yeah.
And I have this very vivid memory of looking to my dad in the front seat driving the car, and he was just unbothered by the storm. He knew what he was doing. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't afraid. And I remember having that thought of, if my dad isn't afraid, then I don't need to be. If he's not worried about this, then I don't need to be. And the phrase that I like to use with dads is that in fatherhood, like, you are the thermostat, not the thermometer, right? Like you set the tone, you set the atmosphere, you don't react to it. So if I'm coming out of a long day of work with meetings and I'm just kind of exasperated and frustrated and I just don't really I come downstairs and I'm just in a bad mood, right? It sets the tone. People are picking up on how I'm showing up in that moment. I just
Yeah.
had this may be the post you're referring to, Jonathan. I just did this last week playing a board game. I kind of brought a negative attitude into this board game with my family, and I saw other people start picking up on it and they're starting to act like I was acting. And I had to do a reset with them and apologize for showing up that way. And I wanted to bring like a new energy, a new perspective, a joyful presence. And I don't think you can do that if you're constantly living on the go, rushing from one thing to the next. It does require you to slow down and intentionally show up with the type of presence that you want to see in your family.
The phrase turning the hearts of fathers to their children implies that they were looking someplace else. In your experience working with dads, what is the biggest competitor for a father's heart this year?
I love this question. I think it can vary. I'm trying to think of how to most succinctly answer based on, the feedback that I get from dads and just what I hear in my conversations. What I'd say here is that I think it's often not necessarily like bad or negative things that are drawing a dad's heart away from his kids. I think it could be things that have good intentions that maybe come out sideways is how I would phrase it. So you take something like work. If you ask a dad about his work, oftentimes they're going to be able to tie that back to providing for their kids. They want to be able to provide good things to their kids. But what happens is their identity gets wrapped up in the work that they do, or the level of provision that they're aiming for is like this moving goalpost, and it's never enough. And so they're consistently striving to make more money or to climb the corporate ladder or to get the next promotion or whatever the thing may be, or work just becomes like a solace for them, right? Fatherhood is hard. It's not for the faint of heart. It does bring a lot of, it can bring a lot of stress. It can bring a lot of guilt. It can be a source of, making dads feel like they don't have everything figured out, and that can be a really uncomfortable feeling. And so dads like use work as a place to hide. They use it as a place to almost like a culturally normative or socially accepted uh, place to avoid the hardship of fatherhood, because it can be done under the guise of providing for your kids. And so they're pouring all this time and energy into their work while their family or their kids are lacking. They need more from their dad. And I'd say that's probably like the most common thing that I hear from dads is you know struggling to figure out how to balance that, doing their work with excellence and wanting to provide for their kids, but not in a way that it's done at the expense of their kids.
How does a dad begin the internal turn, reconnecting with his own heavenly father so he has something worth passing down?
The short answer is, I think a child seeing their father live out a real relationship, a real walk at 3 miles per hour with God, is the thing that allows them to like grab on to that legacy.
Let's talk about teaching kids effective prayer. Many kids view prayer as grace before meals or a ritual or just a list of wants. How can a dad help his child move from reciting prayers to actually communicating with the living God?
I think very similarly, when I think about this question, I think about modeling a rich, deep prayer life for our kids. Uh, when I when I think about the things that I've taught my children, whether prayer or how to throw a football or how to ride a bike, there's an element where it becomes so much easier to latch on to or to understand if you're seeing these things all play out, right? So if you're imagining, uh, I'll use throwing the football as the example. If I'm trying to walk my kids through how to throw a football without ever showing them what it actually looks like, I'm just trying to explain to them step by step what the angle of their arm needs to be and how to hold the football and how to follow through and all the different components of throwing a football. It it becomes almost impossible to walk them through the nuances that it takes to throw this a perfect spiral. But if I go in the yard and I'm showing them, I'm constantly throwing the football back and forth with them, and they're watching me time and time again, hundreds of repetitions of me throwing the football and them modeling it back, and I'm slowly tweaking and adjusting things as they're throwing it to help them develop better mechanics or to throw a better pass. It becomes much easier for them to grasp. It becomes something that they can see, they can emulate. And I think the same is true for prayer, in that it becomes important for our kids to see us as dads modeling this out. To your point, Jonathan, not just in saying grace before a meal or saying a blessing or prayer before bed, though I think those are really valuable things. I'm not by any means trying to diminish the importance of those, but to show them the freedom of a rich prayer life with God, and that we can bring anything and everything to him when things are hard or when we're frustrated or when we're angry, that all of those things are moments that we can bring to God in prayer. And so I mentioned earlier, we've got goats and we've been relocating them to another part of our yard. And part of that has been rebuilding a fence. And so last night, my 10-year-old son was out there trying to take T-posts out of the ground to move them to the new location. And getting a T-post out of the ground is not an easy thing. And he's out there just working so diligently, moving this thing back and forth, trying to get it out. And I kind of leave him up there to work on it while I go down to the other part of the yard to build the new fence. And he comes down and he's just like overjoyed. He's holding this T-post above his head, like in victory. And I'm looking at him like, buddy, that was really hard, wasn't it? It's like, yeah. He's like, I was just praying and asking God to help me and give me strength to get this thing out of the ground. And that he's praying in that moment of getting a T-post out of the ground, because it's something that we've like tried to model, that like when we're in moments where things are hard or they feel overwhelming, whether it's because you can't get a T-post out of the ground or because you're feeling really worried and anxious about a storm or whatever the thing is, that those are moments and like invitations to like come to the Father, and that like he is able to know and understand and like speak to us in those moments, to equip us with what we need. And so I really want my kids to see me model that out, not just in like the kind of turnkey moments like a meal or at bedtime, but in every aspect and every moment of life.
Sometimes we put an emphasis on prayer, communicating to God, which is good, which is exactly what we should be doing. But likewise, sometimes we tend to not focus on hearing from God. How do we teach our kids to hear God's voice? We know that he speaks to us through scripture, but there are so many other ways that God also speaks to us. How do we teach our kids to hear him?
Such a good question. And um, I so for me personally and for my wife as well, we are we've for many years been very big into journaling the voice of God. Um, there's a group called the Cageless Birds. Jonathan, David, and Melissa Helzer. They're up in North Carolina. They've been just very influential in our life with God, and they have a number of tremendous resources that I highly encourage for dads and for families. on this very topic of how you hear the voice of God and how you journal the voice of God. And so that in particular has been something that we have tried to teach to our, especially our older kids, our 11 and 10-year-old right now. And I think it comes down to, again, not to continue to come back to the pace thing, but hearing the voice of God requires us to slow down enough to pay attention to what God is saying. You hear, you read in scripture that the voice of God is a still small whisper, and that becomes so easy to miss when everything else in life is so fast and loud. Um, with 6 kids, you can imagine, like, our house can be very loud, very chaotic. There's a lot happening at any given point. And to try to like recognize or hear or notice the small things happening in my kids in those moments is can be really difficult, right? I have to like still myself, quiet myself, again, be that thermostat in that moment to cut through the noise and really see the hearts of my kids, the heart of my wife, to understand what is happening in this moment and what is needed of me right now. And I think in the same way, like, hearing the voice of God requires us to slow down, to understand the characteristics of his voice, to be able to reconcile it with scripture, to be able to live in community where other people are able to hear and process and validate. There's so many aspects like that that I think become really important as you yourself are learning to hear the voice of God, and teaching your kids to do the same. And I think the last thing that I'll say on this too, both on the topic of the last two questions, both praying and hearing the voice of God, the phrase live in the day but measure in the decade is one of my favorites when it comes to fatherhood. It's like that demanding that daily presence with your kids, with God, with your spouse, but also knowing that things like prayer, things like hearing the voice of God, building character into your kids, like those things don't happen overnight. While you're fighting for them day after day after day, can often feel like there's just no fruit from it. That like your efforts are for nothing. And I just want any dad or anybody that's listening to this to not feel discouraged if you're in a place where you're fighting for these things for your kids and you're just not seeing the fruit of it. These are things that I have fought for years, and I have failed at fighting for, and like we're just now starting to see the fruit in some areas. And so it just takes that like steady, persistent faith to show up day after day, uh, to really fight for and value these things in your kids. So I wanted to make sure I called that out too.
If love moves at 3 miles per hour, how can we incorporate prayer into the in between moments of life, walking to the park, driving to school, rather than just at bedtime?
I think it was Pete Gregg, who has written a number of books on prayer that I found really helpful. He talks about like prayer not needing to be eloquent or long-winded or even like fully thought through. Like we don't have to know exactly what to pray for. Um, like I think it's him that says the simplest prayer of just simply the word help. Like it can be that simple, right? It doesn't have to be an overly complex thing. Like, you think about as a dad, if your kid needs something, they're just like, Dad, help me, or like, Dad, I'm scared. Like, that just does something to your heart as a father. Like, that turns your heart to your kids. Those simple words And I think it could be the same for us with God. Like we feel so often we've got to clean ourselves up, or we have to come with elegant words to persuade God to move or to act. But the reality is, like, the simplest of prayers are often the ones that like draw us nearest to Him, at least in my experience. And so I think when we slow down enough in those in between moments, like you're mentioning, Isaac, when you're logging off one meeting and about to dial into the next one, any of these moments, like when we can slow down enough to recognize what's on our heart, what am I feeling right now? Am I excited about something? I just need to thank God for that thing. Or, man, I've kind of got this pit in my stomach. I don't really know why. I need to maybe just ask God for some like clarity on what's bothering me right now. Or, man, I'm feeling really worried about this test that I have coming up tomorrow. I'm just going to ask God to like give me some peace in that. Like, when we slow down enough to recognize what's going on in ourselves, like, we can bring those things to God in ways that I think are really beautiful, really simple, but really beautiful.
You offer a free training for dads to help them manage their stress around their kids. How can dads get this training and connect with you?
I do have a free training. There's a link to it on my LinkedIn page. It's like a 30-minute video that essentially just explains in a lot more detail what I just talked about with emotional regulation. And it includes a few practices or exercises that dads can engage in to start better understanding how they're showing up, what their tendencies are, and why it matters in fatherhood.
Tyler, as we close, what is your challenge for dads listening now?
My favorite piece of advice to give to dads is start where you are, not where you think you should be. And so, with that, if you're a dad who has struggled with your faith and your prayer life, and you feel the weight of wanting to pass that down to your kids, but you're not sure how to do that, or you're a dad that does struggle with your regulation and you're constantly losing your cool and yelling at your kids because you just feel so overwhelmed and stressed out by the demands of life. First and foremost, you're not alone in that. You are like in good company with many other good, faithful dads that are trying to navigate this. And the second thing is, like, you don't have to have it all figured out now. Starting where you are, taking one small step in the direction you want to go, whether that is just praying before a meal with your family to start introducing the rhythm of prayer, or saying a bedtime blessing over your kids. Like that's a wonderful place to start if this is something that has been a struggle for you, or it's been just not a consistent rhythm or habit within your family. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to put that pressure on yourself. You can start where you are and build on that day after day.
Tyler, this has been a really powerful conversation. I know Isaac has really enjoyed the conversation with you. I have too. We've learned a lot. So thank you so much for being on the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great to talk with both of you, and love what y'all are doing. The father-son combo here hosting this together is incredible, and the first I've experienced with something like that, and I hope y'all keep building this. It's phenomenal.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.